My wife was standing in our driveway holding paperwork, just trying to answer a question. She was calm. She wasn't arguing. She wasn't causing trouble. Then HOA Karen stepped forward. She was wearing a bright red dress and holding a measuring tape, shouting about violations and property lines. She moved closer and closer, yelling louder with every word. Suddenly, everything went wrong. Karen lunged forward and wrapped the measuring tape around my wife's neck, pulling hard while screaming that she was enforcing the rules. My wife struggled to breathe. Neighbors screamed. Phones came out. Karen didn't stop. She acted like hurting someone was part of her job. But Karen had no idea that the woman she attacked in our driveway is the mother of a U.S. Navy SEAL. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you are watching from. And please hit subscribe for more stories where the good guys always win. My wife was standing in our driveway, holding a thin stack of paperwork. Nothing dramatic, nothing confrontational, just papers folded neatly in her hands, the way she always does when she wants to be prepared. The sun was high, the afternoon quiet, the neighborhood calm in that ordinary, forgettable way that makes you believe nothing bad can happen right here. She was calm. Her shoulders were relaxed. Her voice was steady. She wasn't arguing. She wasn't raising her voice. She wasn't accusing anyone. She wasn't causing trouble. She was just answering a question, the kind of question people ask every day, the kind of conversation that should have ended in 30 seconds with a nod and a polite goodbye. Our driveway felt safe, familiar, ours. The concrete still held the warmth of the sun. A light breeze moved the leaves along the curb. Somewhere down the street, a lawnmower hummed. Then HOA Karen stepped forward. At first, it was just movement in the corner of my vision. Someone approaching too quickly, shoes clicking sharply against the pavement faster than necessary. I looked up. She was wearing a bright red dress. Not a soft red, not a friendly red, a sharp red, a demanding red, the kind of red that doesn't blend in. It challenges. In her hand was a measuring tape, yellow, metal-tipped, extended halfway, like it was already prepared for a fight. She didn't greet my wife. She didn't say hello. Didn't ask how her day was. Didn't introduce herself. She raised the tape and started shouting. "Violations!" Karen yelled. "Property lines! You can't do this!" Her voice cut through the quiet street, loud and aggressive, pulling attention from every direction. Curtains shifted. A garage door paused halfway down. Someone across the street stepped onto their porch. My wife stayed calm. She lifted the paperwork slightly, the way people do when they're trying to show they have information, not attitude. "I can explain," my wife said calmly. Karen didn't listen. She stepped closer. Too close. The measuring tape snapped out farther with a harsh metallic sound. Karen waved it inches from my wife's face. "I measured this," Karen shouted. "You are in violation." My wife took a small step back, not in fear but in instinct, the kind of step you take when someone invades your space and you don't want the situation to escalate. "I understand," my wife said. "We checked the property survey." Karen interrupted her. "No," she snapped. "You don't understand anything." Her voice got louder. Not just louder, angrier. Each word carried more heat, more frustration, more of something that had nothing to do with property lines and everything to do with control. Karen stepped closer again. Now the measuring tape wasn't just waving. It was level with my wife's neck. I felt something tighten in my chest. This wasn't a conversation anymore. This wasn't enforcement. This was rage looking for a place to land. My wife tried again. "We're happy to resolve this," she said evenly. "There's no need to yell." That sentence changed everything. Karen's face twisted. Her jaw clenched. Her eyes hardened. Her grip on the measuring tape tightened. Suddenly, everything went wrong. Karen lunged forward. There was no warning, no hesitation, no moment to react. She wrapped the measuring tape around my wife's neck, hard, the metal edge pressed against skin. Karen pulled back with both hands, screaming as she did it. "I'm enforcing the rules," she shouted. "You don't get special treatment." The sound my wife made wasn't a scream. It was a sharp, panicked gasp, the kind of sound that comes from surprise and pain colliding at the same time. Her hands flew to her throat. The paperwork fell to the ground, pages scattering across the driveway like startled birds. Her knees buckled slightly as she struggled to breathe. I heard someone scream, then another. "Oh my God, let go of her." Neighbors came running. Doors flew open. Footsteps pounded against concrete. Someone shouted to call 911. Phones appeared instantly, hands shaking, cameras rolling. Karen didn't stop. She leaned back, using her weight, pulling harder like she believed this was part of her job, like this was allowed, like hurting someone was an acceptable step in enforcement. My wife clawed at the tape, her fingers slipping, her face flushed red, then pale. Her eyes widened, not in anger, not in defiance, but in fear. Real fear. The kind that hits when air starts disappearing. I moved. I don't remember crossing the distance. I don't remember my feet hitting the ground. I only remember shouting her name. Karen was still yelling. "You were warned. This ice, what happens?" Someone grabbed Karen's arm from behind. Another person grabbed the tape. The tension released suddenly. My wife collapsed forward, coughing violently, gasping, sucking in air like she had been underwater too long. She fell to her knees, one hand braced against the concrete, the other clutching her throat. Red marks were already forming, thin, angry, undeniable. Karen stumbled back, still holding part of the tape, breathing hard, eyes wild. "Don't touch me," she screamed at the neighbors. "I'm doing my job." No one believed her, not anymore. Phones were pointed directly at her now, recording her words, recording her shaking hands, recording the measuring tape still dangling like proof. She attacked her. Someone yelled. She tried to choke her. Karen pointed at my wife, who was still coughing, still on her knees. "She wouldn't follow HOA rules," Karen shouted. "This is enforcement." Her voice cracked slightly, not with guilt, with frustration that the room had turned against her. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance, growing louder. Karen finally seemed to realize how many people were watching, how many cameras were rolling. Her posture shifted, not confident anymore, defensive. "This is being blown out of proportion," she said loudly. "I didn't hurt anyone." My wife looked up then. Her eyes were watery, her voice hoarse. "I couldn't breathe," she said quietly. That sentence carried more weight than all of Karen's shouting. Police cars pulled up fast. Doors opened, radios crackled, officers moved with purpose. They didn't ask Karen what rules she was enforcing. They looked at my wife's neck. They looked at the tape. They looked at the phones. Karen started talking all at once. She violated. I warned her. I was enforcing. An officer raised a hand. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "step back." That was the first time. Karen went quiet. Just for a moment, just long enough to realize this wasn't about property lines anymore. This wasn't about the HOA. This was about assault. Karen still had no idea, not even now, that the woman she attacked in our driveway, the woman gasping for air on the concrete, the woman she thought she could intimidate and hurt without consequence, is the mother of a U.S. Navy SEAL, and the phone call that followed would change everything. The measuring tape tightened, not all at once, not instantly. It tightened the way danger does when someone commits fully to hurting another person. My wife's hands flew to her throat, her fingers clawed at the thin strip of metal pressing into her skin, but the tape was smooth, slippery. There was nothing to grab onto, nothing to stop it. The paperwork slipped from her hands and scattered across the driveway. Pages fluttered in the breeze, ignored, forgotten, meaningless now. Her knees buckled slightly as she gasped for air. Not a scream, a sharp, broken sound. The sound a body makes when it suddenly realizes oxygen is disappearing. "Let go!" someone screamed. The shout came from across the street, raw and panicked. It cut through the air and snapped people out of their houses, out of their routines, out of disbelief. Doors flew open. A car door slammed hard enough to echo. Someone shouted, "Call 911!" Another voice yelled, "She's choking her!" My wife tried to speak. She couldn't. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her chest rose sharply, then fell, then rose again in quick, shallow movements that weren't enough. Her eyes widened, not with anger, not with defiance, with fear, real fear. The kind that comes when your body starts sending signals your mind can't ignore. Karen kept pulling. She leaned back slightly, bracing her feet against the driveway like she was testing resistance. Like this was a tug of war she intended to win. Her face was red, not flushed with embarrassment, red with effort. Her jaw was clenched so hard the muscles jumped. Her hands were wrapped tightly around the measuring tape, knuckles white, fingers shaking with strain. Her voice was wild. "I warned you," Karen screamed. "These are the rules." She shouted the words like they justified everything, like rules could replace air, like authority could excuse violence. My wife staggered. Her hands slid uselessly along the tape. Her breathing turned into desperate, uneven gasps. Each inhale sounded thinner than the last. Her vision blurred. I could see it in her eyes. They weren't focused anymore. They darted wildly, searching for help, for something solid to hold onto, for someone to stop this. Neighbors ran toward us. Footsteps pounded against concrete. Someone tripped on the curb. Another person shouted my wife's name. A man grabbed Karen's shoulder. "Let her go," he yelled. Karen jerked away violently. "Don't touch me," she screamed. "I'm doing my job." Her grip tightened again. The measuring tape pressed harder. My wife's body started to sag. Her knees bent more deeply now, strength draining fast. One hand fell away from her throat and hit the ground, palms scraping against the rough concrete. Her breathing changed, shorter, rougher, desperate. I heard a sound escape her throat, a thin wheeze, the sound of air trying to get through a space that was no longer open. Time slowed. Everything felt unreal. The bright afternoon sun, the green lawns, the quiet street that seconds ago felt ordinary. Now it felt like a stage for something impossible. Karen was still shouting, "You don't get special treatment. You think you're above the rules." Spit flew from her mouth as she screamed. Her face twisted with rage, eyes wide, unblinking, fixed on my wife like she didn't even see a person anymore, just an obstacle. My wife's lips turned pale. Her face shifted from red to an unhealthy gray. Her eyes met mine for a brief second. There was no anger in them, no accusation, just fear and confusion, like she couldn't understand how answering a question had led here. Someone screamed again, "Stop her! She's going to kill her." That word, kill, hit hard. Hands grabbed Karen again, this time more than one. Someone seized her wrist. Another grabbed the tape itself. Karen screamed like she was the one being attacked. "Get off me! You can't do this!" The tension snapped. The measuring tape loosened suddenly. My wife collapsed forward, not gracefully, not slowly. She dropped. Her body hit the driveway hard, knees first, then hands, then her shoulder as she curled ignored instinctively. She coughed violently, gasping, sucking in air like she had been underwater too long. Her coughs were deep, racking, painful. She gagged once, then again, clutching her throat as if she expected the tape to still be there. I dropped beside her. She was shaking. Her whole body trembled uncontrollably. Each breath came with a rasp, like her throat was raw inside. "It's okay," I said, though my voice didn't sound okay at all. "You're okay. Breathe. Just breathe." She nodded weakly, eyes squeezed shut, tears streaming down her face without sound. Around us, the street erupted. People shouting at Karen. People checking on my wife. People yelling into phones. "Police are on the way. I got it on video. She tried to choke her." Karen stumbled backward. She was still holding the measuring tape, still gripping it like proof of something. Her chest rose and fell rapidly now, but not from fear, from anger. "She wouldn't listen," Karen shouted. "I had to enforce it." No one listened to her anymore. Every eye was on my wife, on the red marks forming around her neck. Thin lines at first, then darker, angrier, undeniable. Someone handed my wife a bottle of water. She took a small sip, then another, coughing again as it went down. Her voice was barely there. "I couldn't breathe," she whispered. The words were quiet, but they cut through everything. Sirens grew louder, close now. Karen finally seemed to notice. Her posture changed, not confident anymore. Rigid. Her eyes darted from face to face, from phone to phone, from my wife's neck to the approaching police cars. "This is being blown out of proportion," she said loudly, forcing the words out. "I didn't hurt anyone." No one answered. The police arrived. Doors opened hard. Officers moved quickly, eyes scanning, hands already reaching for radios. They didn't ask Karen what rules she was enforcing. Why looked at my wife? They looked at her neck. They looked at the measuring tape. They looked at the phones being held up. Karen started talking all at once. She violated. I warned her. I was just... An officer raised his hand. Ma'am, he said firmly, stop talking. Karen froze. Just for a second. Just long enough to realize something important. This wasn't an HOA discussion. This wasn't T enforcement. This was assault. And the air my wife almost lost was about to cost Karen far more than she ever imagined. Finally, hands grabbed Karen from behind. Not gently, not politely. Firm hands. Urgent hands. The measuring tape loosened. Just enough. My wife dropped to her knees like her body had finally given up, pretending it was okay. She coughed hard, deep sounds tearing out of her chest as air rushed back into lungs that had been starved seconds ago. She gagged once. Then again. Her hands shook violently as she clutched her throat, fingers pressing against skin that already felt swollen and sore. Tears streamed down her face. Not dramatic, not loud, just pure shock finally finding its way out. Karen stumbled forward as the tension released. She nearly lost her balance, and when she turned around, she was furious. Her face was twisted with rage, not fear, not regret. Rage. Don't touch me, Karen screamed. Her voice cracked the air like a whip. I'm doing my job. The words echoed down the street. Phones were everywhere now. Not one, not two, dozens. Held up at every angle, recording her voice, recording her face, recording the measuring tape still dangling from her clenched fist like a confession she didn't realize she was holding. Someone yelled, "She attacked her!" Another voice followed immediately. She tried to choke her. Karen snapped her head toward the sound. She wouldn't follow HOA rules, she shouted back, pointing wildly at my wife. This is N4. Cement. The word enforcement sounded hollow now, empty. It landed wrong in the open air, surrounded by witnesses and fear and the sound of my wife still struggling to breathe. No one believed her. Not anymore. Not a single person nodded. Not a single voice agreed. The neighbors who had rushed out moments earlier now stood frozen, watching. Some were pale, some angry, some shaking with adrenaline that hadn't worn off yet. A man near the curb shouted, "You almost killed her!" Karen scoffed. "Oh, stop being dramatic," she snapped. "She's fine." My wife coughed again. Hard. Her entire body folded forward as she sucked in another painful breath. I knelt beside her, one hand on her back, feeling her ribs move too fast, too shallow. "She's not fine," I said. My voice surprised me. It was calm. Too calm. Karen turned on me instantly. "This is your fault," she screamed. "You people think rules don't apply to you." "Rules?" Someone yelled back. "You wrapped a tape around her neck." Karen shook her head violently. "That's not what happened," she shouted. "I was measuring." Phones zoomed in closer. People weren't just recording anymore. They were preserving. One woman stepped forward, her hands shaking as she held her phone up. "We saw everything," she said. "You grabbed her." Karen's eyes flicked to the phone, then to another, then another. Her posture changed, not much, but enough. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and crossed her arms tightly across her chest, like she was bracing herself against reality. "I represent the HOA," Karen said loudly. "I have authority." Authority, she said it like a shield, like a badge, like a spell that should make everyone else step back. It didn't work. A neighbor laughed, short, sharp, humorless. "Authority to choke people?" he asked. Karen snapped back. She was non-compliant. My wife lifted her head then, her eyes were red, her voice hoarse, her breathing still uneven. "I was answering a question," she said quietly. That sentence cut deeper than shouting ever could. The street went silent, no lawnmowers, no birds, no murmurs, just the sound of my wife's breath finally slowing. Karen opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. She refused to cooperate, Karen said, her voice sharper now. Defensive. "I had no choice." "No choice?" Someone echoed. A woman who had been standing near her mailbox stepped forward. "You always have a choice," she said. "You chose violence." Karen's face flushed. "This is harassment," she yelled. "You're all harassing me." Phones stayed up. No one backed down. Someone else shouted, "You assaulted her." Karen pointed again at my wife. She violated property lines. The officer cars hadn't arrived yet. but the shift had already happened. This was no longer Karen controlling the moment. This was the moment controlling Karen. She paced a step back and forth, the measuring tape still in her hand, like she didn't know what to do with it now. She looked at it briefly, almost confused, then tightened her grip again like it reassured her. "This is being blown out of proportion," she insisted. "I didn't hurt anyone." My wife slowly stood with help. She was unsteady, her legs weak, her hands still pressed to her throat. Red marks were fully visible now. Not faint, not questionable, clear. Someone gasped when they saw them clearly for the first time. "Oh my God." Karen followed their gaze. She saw the marks, and for the first time, real fear flickered across her face, just for a second. Then she masked it. "That happens when people overreact," she said quickly. "She's exaggerating." The crowd reacted instantly. Anger surged. "Are you serious? You did that. You should be ashamed." Karen backed up another step. She was no longer advancing. She was retreating, but still talking, still insisting, still clinging to authority like it could rewind time. "I followed procedure," she said. "You don't understand how HOAs work," someone shouted back. "This isn't an HOA issue," Karen snapped. "Everything is an HOA issue." Sirens grew louder, much louder. Karen heard them. Everyone did. She froze. Her mouth stopped moving. Her eyes darted down the street where flashing lights were now visible between houses. The measuring tape slipped slightly in her hand. She tightened her grip again, jaw clenched. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "I didn't do anything wrong." But her voice didn't carry like it did before. It didn't command. It didn't control. It sounded small. The police cars pulled up, fast, doors opened. Officers stepped out. They didn't rush toward Karen. They didn't raise their voices. They looked, they assessed. They saw my wife's neck. They saw the tape. They saw the phones. Karen immediately started talking. She violated. I warned her. I was enforcing. An officer raised a hand. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "stop." Karen froze mid-word. Silence dropped over the driveway again. The officer turned to my wife. "Are you hurt?" My wife nodded slowly. "I couldn't breathe," she said. That was enough. Karen still didn't understand. Not fully. Not yet. She still thought this was an argument. Still thought she could talk her way out. Still thought authority came from speaking the loudest. She had no idea that everything she had just said, everything she had just done, every word captured on camera, was about to be taken apart carefully, methodically, by people who didn't care about HOA rules. People who cared about one thing only, what she did, and who she did it to. Police sirens echoed down the street, not faint, not distant, close, too close to ignore. The sound cut through the driveway and froze everything in place. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Shouting died off. Even the phones being held up seemed to steady, like the whole street was holding its breath. Karen heard them. Her confidence wavered for the first time. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't obvious. Just a slight stiffening of her shoulders. A pause between words. A glance down the street she couldn't control. Moments earlier she had been loud, dominant, certain she could still explain her way out. Now her voice faltered, and when she spoke again, it came out thinner. "Good," she said sharply, trying to recover. "They'll clear this up." No one responded. Because no one believed that anymore. The sirens grew louder. Red and blue lights flashed between houses, reflected off parked cars, flickered across the measuring tape still clutched in Karen's hand. The first police car pulled up hard to the curb. Doors opened immediately. 2 officers stepped out with purpose, calm, trained, eyes already scanning. They didn't rush. They didn't shout. They assessed. The second car arrived seconds later, then a third, the street filled with uniforms and radios and the low murmur of authority that doesn't need to announce itself. Karen straightened. She lifted her chin again, trying to reclaim the posture that had served her earlier. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, adjusted her dress, tightened her grip on the tape like it was a badge. "I'll explain," she said loudly, stepping forward. An officer raised a hand. "Ma'am," he said firmly. Step back. Karen froze, just for a beat. Then she scoffed. I'm the HOA representative, she snapped. I was enforcing. Step back, the officer repeated, his tone unchanged. Karen did. One step, reluctantly. The officer turned away from her without another word and moved toward my wife. Are you hurt? He asked. My wife nodded slowly. She W. As standing now, but barely. One hand rested against the hood of a car for balance. The other hovered near her throat, fingers trembling, unsure whether to touch the bruising again. I couldn't breathe, she said. Her voice was hoarse, thin, still recovering. The officer's eyes went to her neck. The marks were unmistakable now. Not faint, not questionable. Clear red lines where the tape had pressed, slight swelling, bruising already starting to bloom under the skin. The officer's jaw tightened. He nodded once and turned slightly so his body blocked Karen's view of my wife. Medical? He asked. Someone answered from the crowd. She needs to be checked, a neighbor said. She was choking her, Karen snapped. That's not what happened. An officer turned toward her immediately. Ma'am, he said, do not interrupt. Karen opened her mouth again, closed it. Her hands shook now. Another officer approached the group of neighbors holding phones. Who has video? He asked. Hands went up. Several. Phones were offered forward, screens already cued to the moment where Karen lunged, where the tape wrapped tight, where my wife struggled. The officer watched quietly. No reaction. No commentary. He paused the video, looked at Karen, then back at my wife's neck, then at the measuring tape still dangling uselessly from Karen's hand. Ma'am, he said to Karen, put the tape down. Karen hesitated, just long enough to be noticed. I need it for evidence, she said quickly. The officer held out his hand. Put it down. Karen dropped it. The tape hit the concrete with a hollow clatter that sounded louder than it should have. The crowd murmured. Karen's shoulders slumped a fraction. She tried again. She violated property lines, she said, voice rising. I followed procedure. The officer finally looked directly at her. This is not a civil HOA issue, he said. This is a criminal investigation. The word criminal landed heavy. Karen swallowed. That's ridiculous, she muttered. Another officer stepped closer. Ma'am, he said, you are being recorded by multiple witnesses. You will have an opportunity to make a statement later. Right now, you need to remain quiet. Karen laughed nervously. You can't be serious. No one laughed with her. The officers began separating people. Witnesses to one side, my wife seated carefully on the curb with someone supporting her. Karen kept a few steps back under watch. Statements were taken, one by one. Neighbors spoke calmly, clearly, repeating the same details. She was holding papers. She wasn't yelling. She wrapped the tape around her neck. She kept pulling. The consistency was undeniable. Karen's version changed every time she tried to tell it. First she was measuring, then she was warning, then she was defending herself. Then she said she never touched my wife at all. Each version contradicted the last. The officer writing notes didn't look up. He didn't need to. He had video. He had witnesses. He had marks on my wife's neck. Karen paced now, confined to a small space by the presence of uniforms. She crossed and uncrossed her arms. She rubbed her hands together. She muttered under her breath. This is harassment, she said. They're all against me. No one responded. An EMT unit arrived quietly. A paramedic knelt beside my wife. Can you take a deep breath for me? He asked. She tried. It hurt. She winced but nodded. I'm okay, she said softly, though it was clear she wasn't not fully. While they checked her, the officer returned to Karen. Ma'am, he said, do you have any injuries? Karen scoffed. Of course not, she snapped. I'm the one being attacked. The officer didn't argue. He wrote something down. That's when my wife did something no one expected. She reached into her pocket. Her ND was steady now, not rushed, not shaking. She pulled out her phone. I watched her thumb hover for a second, just a second. Then she pressed a name. The call connected quickly. She didn't raise her voice, didn't explain, didn't dramatize. She spoke calmly. "Hi," she said. "I'm okay." A pause, then quieter. "I need you here." She listened, nodded once. "I'm at the house," she added. "Yes, now." She ended the call. Karen noticed. "What was that?" She snapped. "Calling your lawyer?" My wife didn't answer. She didn't look at Karen. She just slid the phone back into her pocket and focused on her breathing. The officers exchanged glances. "Who did you call?" one asked gently. "My son," my wife said. Karen laughed again, a short dismissive sound. "Good," she said. "Let him see what happens when people break HOA rules." The officer's pen paused, just briefly. "What does your son do?" he asked. My wife answered simply, "He's a U.S. Navy SEAL." The street went quiet. Not stunned silence. Weighted silence. The kind that settles and stays. Karen's smile froze. She blinked. Once, twice, then scoffed loudly. "Sure he is," she said. "Everyone's related to a hero." No one laughed. The officers didn't react outwardly. They didn't need to. They knew one thing for certain now. This situation was not going to get smaller. It was only going to get clearer. The sirens had stopped. The shouting had ended. The story was set. And somewhere, not far away, a call had been answered. The street was still crowded when the black truck arrived, not rushing, not loud. It turned the corner slowly and rolled to a stop a short distance away, engine quiet, windows dark. Nothing about it demanded attention, except the way everyone seemed to notice it anyway. A door opened. A man stepped out. He didn't slam the door. Didn't hurry. Didn't look around like he was searching for conflict. He stood for a moment, taking in the scene the way someone trained to read environments does, where people were standing, who was speaking, where the tension lived. Then he walked, calm, controlled, purposeful. His posture was unmistakable, straight-backed, balanced, still, not stiff with anger, not loose with confidence, disciplined. He didn't look at Karen. Not once. He walked straight past the officers, who noticed him immediately. One of them started to speak, then stopped. Recognition flickered across the officer's face. A small nod followed. The man continued on. He knelt beside my wife, carefully, like he was handling something fragile, not because she was weak, but because she had been hurt. "Mom," he said softly, "are you okay?" His voice was low, steady, the kind of voice that doesn't rise because it doesn't need to. My wife looked at him, really looked. Her eyes filled instantly, not with panic, not with fear, but with relief. "I'm okay," she said quietly. "It hurts, but I'm okay." He nodded once. That was all. No panic, no explosion of emotion. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder, grounding her. Then he stood, slowly, deliberately. Only then did he turn and look at Karen. It wasn't an aggressive look. It wasn't threatening. It was assessing, the way someone looks at a situation they already understand. Everything about him said one thing. This was over. Karen noticed the change immediately, not because he shouted, not because anyone announced him, because the air shifted. The officers straightened slightly, the crowd quieted. Even the phones lowered a fraction. Karen's voice, which had been loud minutes earlier, dropped when she spoke again. "Who is that?" she asked sharply, trying to sound in control. No one answered her. The man took one step forward, then another. He stopped a respectful distance away, not crowding, not intimidating, just sent. He spoke to the officers first. "Is my mother receiving medical attention?" he asked. "Yes, sir," one officer replied. "EMTs are checking her now." "Good," he said. One word, no commentary. He nodded toward the measuring tape lying on the concrete. "Is that what was used?" he asked calmly. The officer followed his gaze. "Yes," he said. "It was wrapped around her neck." The man's jaw tightened, just slightly, not visible to most, but enough. He looked back at my wife, checking again. Then he turned to Karen. This time he spoke directly to her. "What's your name?" he asked. Karen blinked. The question caught her off guard. She had been shouting at neighbors, arguing with officers, insisting on authority, but no one had asked her something so simple. "Kay," Karen, she said. Her voice was quieter now. What gives you the right, he asked evenly, to put your hands on my mother? Karen bristled. I was enforcing HOA rules, she snapped, trying to recover. She was non-compliant. The man didn't interrupt. He didn't argue. He let her finish. People like Karen always reveal more when they talk. When she stopped, waiting for a reaction, he spoke again. You wrapped a metal tape around her neck, he said. You restricted her airway. You continued pulling while she was struggling to breathe. Karen scoffed weakly. That's not... Answer the question, he said calmly. His voice didn't rise, but it didn't invite debate either. Karen swallowed. She wouldn't listen, she said. I had to enforce it. The man nodded once. Then he looked to the officers. Is there video? He asked. Yes, an officer replied. Multiple angles? Witnesses? Many? Medical marks documented? Yes. He turned back to Karen. You're done, he said quietly. Karen laughed nervously. You can't talk to me like that, she snapped. You don't know who I am. The man tilted his head slightly. I know who you touched, he said. The street went silent. Karen opened her mouth, closed it. Her red dress suddenly looked different. Not commanding, not authoritative, just loud. Out of place. One of the officers spoke then, addressing the man respectfully. Sir, for the record, can you state your name? He did, clearly, calmly. The officer nodded again. Yes, sir, he said. Karen's eyes darted between them. What's going on? She demanded. Why are you treating him differently? No one answered her immediately. Another officer stepped closer. Ma'am, he said, please place your hands behind your back. Karen stared at him. You can't be serious, she said. I am, the officer replied. Karen laughed again, high, brittle, desperate. This is ridiculous, she said. You're overreacting. The officer didn't move. Hands behind your back, he repeated. Karen looked around, at the neighbors, at the phones, at my wife sitting with EMTs, at the man standing calmly a few feet away. No one helped her. No one argued on her behalf. Her hands shook as she slowly complied. The sound of handcuffs closing was quiet, but it carried. Karen gasped. I've never been arrested, she whispered. The officer responded evenly. Everyone starts somewhere. As she was guided a step away, Karen twisted her head toward the man. This is your fault, she snapped. You think being military makes you better than everyone else? He didn't respond. He didn't need to. He watched as she was escorted toward the patrol car, still talking, still insisting, still trying to control a moment that had already left her. When she was gone from earshot, the man returned to his mother. He knelt again. Mom, he said softly. I'm here. She nodded. I know. The EMT finished checking her vitals. We'd like to take you in for observation, he said gently. She agreed. As she was helped up, she reached for her son's hand. He took it, not tightly, just enough. The crowd began to disperse slowly. Conversations were quiet now, respectful, heavy. The measuring tape lay abandoned on the driveway. No longer a tool, no longer a weapon, just evidence. Karen's voice faded as the patrol car door closed. Her red dress disappeared behind tinted glass, and what remained was something she could never erase. The moment she learned that authority does not come from shouting, that rules do not excuse violence, and that you never know whose family you are hurting until it's far too late. Karen was arrested, not for OA violations, not for paperwork, not for property lines, for assault. The words sounded unreal at first, even as they were spoken calmly and written carefully into reports. Assault. Criminal assault. The kind of charge that doesn't disappear with excuses or explanations. The kind that follows you. The patrol car door closed with a soft, final sound. Not a slam, not dramatic, just closed. And with it, Karen's voice, once loud enough to dominate the street, was cut off. The driveway felt strangely quiet after that. Neighbors stood around for a moment, unsure what to do with the silence. Phones were lowered. Conversations stopped mid-thought. The adrenaline that had fueled shouting and movement began to drain away, leaving behind heaviness. The measuring tape still lay on the concrete. No one picked it up. It looked small now. Harmless. Innocent. And yet everyone knew what it had been used for. The HOA moved fast, faster than anyone expected. By the next morning, emails had already gone out, carefully worded, polite, distant. Phrases like, "We take this matter seriously, and this individual no longer represents our organization." Karen's name was gone, removed from mailing lists, removed from committees, removed from every role that had ever given her power over anyone else. There was no defense of her actions, no public support, no attempt to explain. The HOA did what organizations always do when exposure becomes dangerous. They erased her. Her authority vanished overnight. No badge, no clipboard, no ability to knock on doors and demand compliance, just a woman facing the consequences of what she chose to do. My wife healed, not quickly, not easily. Healing for her did not mean waking up one day and feeling normal again. It meant moving carefully, speaking softly, touching her neck unconsciously, checking that the skin was still smooth, still free. The bruises faded slowly, yellow first, then dull brown, then gone. But the memory lingered. She still gets quiet sometimes when she stands in the driveway. It happens without warning. She'll step outside to get the mail or water the plants, and her shoulders will stiffen just a little. Her eyes will scan the street, not looking for anything specific, just making sure it's safe. Sometimes she pauses, sometimes she takes a breath. I don't rush her. I stand nearby. I make sure she knows she's not alone. She is safe, but safety doesn't erase fear overnight. Our driveway feels different now. It looks the same. The concrete hasn't changed. The street is still quiet. But we know what happened there. We know how quickly something ordinary can turn violent when entitlement meets unchecked authority. Karen learned something she will never forget. Not because anyone yelled it at her. Not because it was explained kindly. But because it was enforced. Rules do not justify violence. No policy, no bylaw, no clause written in fine print gives someone the right to hurt another human being. Authority does not excuse cruelty. Wearing a title does not keep you untouchable. Holding power does not give you permission to abuse it. And you never know whose family you are hurting. Not when you raise your voice. Not when you step closer. Not when you decide you're allowed to cross a line. Because sometimes the people you think are quiet, the ones answering questions calmly, the ones holding paperwork instead of shouting, are connected to forces far bigger than you imagined. Sometimes, the woman you attack in a driveway is the mother of a U.S. Navy SEAL. And sometimes the consequences don't come with noise or threats or spectacle. They come quietly, in handcuffs closing, in positions disappearing, in reputations dissolving, in doors that no longer open. Karen will live with that, not dramatically, not publicly, but permanently. And my wife, she lives, she heals. She stands in her driveway again, slowly reclaiming what was almost taken from her, safe, protected, and never powerless.